The Brian Ortega downfall is sad. Brian Ortega just got 50-45 dog walked by Aljamain Sterling at UFC Shanghai this weekend. Now the performance, and to be frank, the whole entire fight week was just sad for Brian. Brian Ortega missed weight again, showing he's way too big for 145. He was even hospitalized during the weight cut. This fight was actually off for a little bit, but then they changed it to a catchweight bout at 153 pounds. But at the end of the day, what happened to that slick jiu-jitsu specialist that could choke and knock out the best in the sport? And how did he go from a 7-0 loss streak to 2-5 in his last 7? Brian Ortega made his UFC debut in July 2014 against Mike De La Torre. Brian Ortega finished this fight very quickly with a first-round rear naked choke, and you would think this would be a great debut for the young star. That was until after the fight, Brian tested positive for yeah, I don't know how to say that, bro. Anyway, it's used as a performance enhancer. That is not a great way to start your UFC career. Next up, they gave Brian Thiago Tavares, which was a big step up for the 24-year-old in his second UFC fight. Thiago was a pretty experienced fighter. With only 4 fights before this, he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. In a very bloody battle, Brian knocked down and TKO'd Thiago in the 3rd round. This was a grave win for the young Ortega. Now, from 2016 to 2018, he finished his next 5 opponents. These opponents would consist of Diego Brandao, Clay Guida, Renato Moicano, Cub Swanson, and the great Frankie Edgar. He finished every single one of these fighters. He was on a streak soaring through the featherweight division, and it was only right that he would meet with the champ. When Brian vs. Max was made in December 2018, Max had a 12-fight winning streak, fighting the best of the best. Now, this fight also had one of my favorite press conference moments ever.
Everything the guy did, I did better. He's on what, 6-fight win streak? I got 12. He beat a champion, I beat 2. And I beat one of them twice. You know, so at the end of the day, the Blessed Express is going around in a circle. We laughing you, bro.
Do you have a response? Sometimes the best response is no response.
Sometimes you don't have a response, so.
And this moment would have aged very well, as the fight was very dominant for Max. Brian just had no answer and absorbed all of Max's shots, and his face looked like this afterwards. The fight was so bad that they ended up stopping the fight due to doctor stoppage in the 4th round. This was a big low point in Brian's career, but after this fight, he actually ended up taking 2 years off. In October 2020, he was booked to fight the Korean Zombie in Abu Dhabi. The bald Brian Ortega controlled rounds 1 through 5, pitching a shutout against the Korean Zombie. This was a great comeback win and a super impressive performance for Brian Ortega. The problem was, since he lost that Max fight so dominantly, he would probably never get another chance to fight him again. Except I forgot to tell you one thing. There is a new champ of the featherweight division. Dana booked UFC 266 Volk vs. Brian Ortega in September 2021. Ortega knew he had to put up a good performance or he would never get another shot at the title. Ortega and Volk had a great fight, but it felt like Volk was always one step ahead. It was a competitive fight, but Volk was clearly getting the upper hand. This was until something crazy happened. Midway through the 3rd, Ortega landed a big left that put Volk down, and Ortega took his chance. He jumped right on Volk's neck. This was one of the tightest guillotines I've ever seen in my life. To this day, I still don't know how Volk got out of that. But anyway, somehow Volk escaped and he ended up winning a decision. Brian thought he was going to be champ, but Volk's toughness got him through and shattered Brian's dreams. After the title loss, Brian got matched up with Yair Rodriguez, another featherweight contender. Sadly, as they were grappling, Brian's shoulder popped out of his socket, meaning Brian could not compete anymore, meaning Yair won the fight. This was another sad fight for Brian. He lost, and it literally wasn't even his fault. Brian would come back a year and a half later for a rematch against Yair, and even though he twisted his ankle during the introductions, he still ended up subbing Yair. This was crazy. When Brian twisted his ankle, I thought the fight was over before it even started, continuing his bad luck. This was Brian's first win in 4 years. Then in June 2024, Brian was offered a short notice fight against the rising star Diego Lopez. He accepted the fight and they thought everything was good until Brian and his team both realized he could not make 145, so they had to move the fight to 155. But as everyone was getting to the arena on fight day, Brian got sick and he could not participate in the fight. Now they still matched Brian up with Diego Lopez later that year. Brian got outstruck every single round, and Diego dominated him. And after not fighting for almost a year, Brian went out to China, couldn't make weight, was hospitalized, then got 50-45 by Aljo. This was a super sad fight week for Brian, and it's really sad to see him become washed. I mean, obviously he's 34, he's out of his prime. I mean, this just happens to these older fighters. They just aren't in the same groove as they were before. Anyway, this was the story of Brian Ortega. What do you think about his downfall, and do you think he can prove all of us wrong? Comment below. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Subscribe, like, and comment.